Welcome to the Arabian Peninsula, Iraq, and Iran. A little Tears for Fears for you. How's that? So anyway, we were mentioning the Arabian Peninsula, Iraq, and Iran as part of the Middle East unit. We had mentioned the Eastern Mediterranean part in Chapter 8, and now we're going to move on to Chapter 9's information. Again, we're going to be flying through this. So here's good old planet Earth, the United States, Europe, South America. We're going to be really focusing on this area. We've hit India, we've hit China, we've hit Japan, we've hit Central Asia, amongst others, Southeast Asia as well. But now we're going to be moving west a little bit. So this is the Middle East. Again, this whole area that we're referring to. The last couple sections were referring to this spot. Now we're going to move a little bit to the south and talk about the Arabian Peninsula, Iraq, and Iran. One of the things that you might not have known about this area was that there are several different countries. And one of the things that you'll notice is that as we study this, it's a lot of desert and a lot of Islam in the area. So going back to the notes, again, there's another picture of the map. The physical geography of this area are Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, United Arab Emirates, also known as the UAE. Many of you will see the city of Dubai on there and just be completely wowed. Actually, let me pull that up right now. This is one of the exceptions to the area being mostly desert. This area it naturally is desert, but because of how wealthy this area is, they can do all sorts of irrigating the area. And I thought this picture was interesting because they're talking about building a building that is shaped like the crescent moon, as you can see from the Faith of Islam. But there are just all sorts of really cool things about this place. Specifically, these are islands that have been built out into the ocean. Let me show you a picture of the World Islands in Dubai. Yeah, this is pretty cool. If you look at this, you can see that there are little pieces of land that's supposed to shape the world. And for a hefty sum, you can purchase an island. It's very small, about a house-sized lot. But in order to get food and get groceries, you have to take a boat back and forth to the mainland to get supplies and everything that you need. But apparently Donald Trump owns one of those islands. I would be thinking about playing the game Risk in real life if I owned one of those islands, like owning this one right here and then declaring war on this one and taking it over, eventually taking all of Australia and then the world. No, just kidding. But anyway, let's get back to this. So I was just talking about the UAE, another wealthy country that inherited the right to host the World Cup in, I think, 2022 was Qatar. Bahrain, Kuwait, and then of course Iraq and Iran. One of the interesting things about this area is that the Arabian Peninsula has no rivers. But Iraq is home of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Again, that's where ancient Mesopotamia was in where Iraq is today. The Arabian area, whenever people refer to Arabia, they're talking about this area. Arabia, or Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, UAE, all that stuff. Again, as you zoom out, it's the crossroads of 3 different continents. So let me pull the maps up again. So the Silk Road definitely had an influence here a long time ago. See, here's Arabia. Africa here, if you went from China to Africa, you had to go through Arabia. If you went from Africa to Europe, this area is not really connected. It looks like it is, but it's pretty far apart. You had to go through Arabia. And to some extent, China to Europe, maybe you did, but then again, you'd have to go through this area again, which we talked about, that very valuable location. So, as you can see, it's really the crossroads of 3 trade routes that link 3 continents together. Some more of the physical geography. It's very mountainous with the Zagros, Elburz, and Kapit Dag mountains. The Rub al Khali, or Empty Quarter, is the world's largest sand desert in the Arabian Peninsula. The An Nafud is in other deserts, and some deserts have sand, while others have gravel and rocks. This little video clip is going to be describing the Empty Quarter, or the Rub al Khali. Again, we saw Yemen and Oman. This is zoomed in here into the southern Arabian Peninsula.
Salalah lies on the edge of the Empty Quarter, a vast wilderness of dunes which stretches for hundreds of miles to the west. Sunrise on the last day of my trip, and I'm off early into the Empty Quarter with my Bedouin guide Mazock to spend one last night in the desert sands.
Again, a Bedouin is one of those Arabic-speaking nomads. They go place to place following cattle, usually camels.
For a long time, the Bedouin here, they have camel milk, no food, no water. You see, this is the Empty Quarter, so nothing, only sand. So the people have only camel. The camel, everything. The camel is house, the camel car, the camel is like everything. So only camel milk. And the people moving with camel milk, with the camel. Anyway, camel go and see little grass in the desert. They make camping and they stay maybe 1 week, 2 weeks like this. After that, moving to another place. This is the life for Bedouin.
It feels absolutely perfect to end my journey here in the Empty Quarter. These sands stretch to all three countries that I visited. And despite the fact that they are so close together, I've learned that they are very different places. Kuwait seems stuck somewhere between its Arab traditions and Western ambitions, and honestly, its oil seems to be more of a curse than a blessing. And the UAE is so fabulous with its glossy cosmopolitan lifestyle, but that glamour really prohibits outsiders from seeing what's beneath the surface there. Oman, however, seems to have struck a very delicate balance between tradition and development, and its nature is just overwhelmingly beautiful. The heartbeat, though, of all three places is definitely Islam. It unites them, and you cannot come here without being affected by its beauty and its power.
So again, with that video, you see that Islam plays a very big part in connecting these people together as far as their identities are concerned. They all see themselves as all Muslims. And it's very hard for a non-Muslim to become part of their society. Again, mostly dry and desert. The mountains have rain and snow, again, because it blocks, maybe you've heard of a rain shadow before, and there's a semi-arid and steppe climate. You might have also heard of something called an oasis. And an oasis is a wet, fertile area in a desert that forms when underground water bubbles to the surface. Now, I know when you see this slide, immediately the first thing is like, oh yeah, that's the Middle East that I know of today, and that's the area that I was thinking of with the oil. But again, water, very valuable resource to the people that are around because it's mostly deserts. You might have heard of a wadi before, which is a dried stream bed. Something that's also pretty interesting in this area is something called fossil water. And fossil water is water that is not being replaced by rainfall. So if you're thinking of seeing the Aral Sea, back when it was, we learned about that area drying up, again, because of rivers not flowing into this area anymore, it's not being replaced by the rainfall. So technically the Aral Sea would be considered fossil water as well. But again, that picture in the bottom right deals strictly with oil in this area. And this area is loaded with crude oil. And I say crude oil because that's what you call it when it's harvested straight out of the ground. And after it's processed and refined, it becomes basically our modern day energy resources: oil, natural gas, gasoline, butane, propane, all of those that are combustible, which means they can be lit on fire or exploded to release energy. Most of what the world gets as far as its energy resources come from the Middle East. So if you don't have good relationships with the Middle East, you've got no energy. So that gives them a lot of power and authority when it comes to the world market today. Some of the countries, as we look at this, Saudi Arabia, most people are Muslim Arabs. You can divide up Islam into two denominations, whether it be Shia Muslims, which believe that the true Islamic teaching can only come from certain religious and political leaders. So that means in a Shia belief system that the only way you can truly understand the Quran is when a religious or political leader reads it and teaches it to you. Then there are also Sunni Muslims, which are people who believe that individuals can interpret Islamic teachings and interpret the Quran for themselves. Islam influences the life for people. In traditional Islam, women have very few rights and very few roles. As you can see in the bottom right, that is what women are many times required to wear out in public. It is seen as obscene for a woman to show her face, and any more than her hands and her eyes are seen as obscene within Islam. So girls, if you are wanting to go to this area, be cautious, I guess, because that's seen as how women are supposed to dress. They must keep arms and legs covered. And also on a side note, the capital city is Riyadh. Yeah, that's not very good organization for a PowerPoint, I guess. But anyway, moving on. Saudi Arabia's government structure might be not what you think it is. They have a monarchy with no elected legislatures. The government officials are relatives. It's an old school, I guess, medieval style monarchy where you have the king is in charge. And the king is not elected. You might not hear too much about this in the world, but that's because Saudi Arabia is the world's largest producer of oil. So if you are going to go start bashing the king of Saudi Arabia, the king of Saudi Arabia might say, well, United States, have fun getting oil. And so the United States tries to be as friendly with these guys as they can. The economy, again, is based on oil, world's leading exporter of oil. And all the world's exporters have kind of gotten together to form something called the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC for short. And OPEC is an international organization whose members work to influence the price of oil on world markets by controlling the supply. It's that whole supply and demand thing again, where if you can control the supply of oil in the world market, you can control the price. So if you're wondering why gas is so expensive, it's because OPEC is determining how much gasoline or oil is going to be traded for. And once they determine that, that's how much basically gasoline is going to cost, is how much oil is being produced. So that's OPEC that's controlling the price of oil as far as gasoline and everything that we see here in the United States. Some other countries in the area are, they all are influenced by Islam and rely on oil exports. And Kuwait, during the Persian Gulf War, was invaded by Iraq for their oil specifically. Oman does not have as much oil as the other countries. They're looking for other ways to make money. But and also today, Yemen has a corrupt elected government, and it's the poorest country, though, on the Arabian Peninsula. And it looks like I'm getting close to the 15-minute mark on this screencast, so that means I'm going to have to stop, and we're going to continue this on Middle Eastern Notes video number 4. Look forward to seeing you then.